All right, so looks like we have another exercise to do. This one deals with computing both the cost of goods sold as well as computing the amount of ending inventory under the three different, the three main types of inventory cost flow assumptions: FIFO, which means first in, first out; Lifo, last in, first out; and average cost. One thing I do want to make mention of is the scenarios that we're dealing with here are fairly limited. So this is a good little exercise to get our feet wet as far as calculating cost of goods sold and ending inventory. But when I look at this term here, average cost, I do want to make mention of the fact that you will often see the term weighted average used for periodic inventory systems, and the term moving average used for perpetual systems. In our particular example, this average cost title here is fine because there wouldn't, with what we're doing, there wouldn't actually be a difference between what we call the periodic inventory system and a perpetual inventory system, and that's just because we don't have a lot of transactions to deal with. Okay, so I'm not trying to openly confuse you right off the bat, but a lot of these exercises that are similar, you will do them a little bit differently if you are dealing with a periodic inventory system or a perpetual inventory system. We do not have to make that distinction for this particular exercise. So we have a scenario here for this company where they have some beginning inventory. They have some inventory that they purchased throughout the year, and then they have cost of goods available for sale, both in total units and in total dollars. So as I look at this a little bit more closely, it does appear that we are using more or less a periodic inventory system here. Do be advised that perpetual inventory systems are a little bit more common. Those types of exercises are quite a bit more difficult, all right, because we would normally have a computer doing all of that work for us. But this is a good exercise to help us get started. So our beginning inventory, we had 1,000 units, and those cost us $100 each. Okay, so if we were to multiply 1,000 times 100, we'd have a beginning inventory value of $100,000. We also purchased inventory, 2,000 units throughout the year at a cost of $150 each. And so 2,000 times 150 is 300. So it says here, and then you also have the final totals there. It says assume that 1,700 units were sold during 2020. So this is definitely the way they've worded this. This is definitely a periodic inventory system. Otherwise, every time an item was sold, we would calculate cost of goods sold for that. But we're just saying, okay, over the course of the year, 1,700 were sold, and then it says compute the cost of goods sold for 2020 and the balance as reported in ending inventory for each of these costing methods. All right, so they want to know the cost of goods sold for FIFO, Lifo, and average cost over on the income statement, as well as the amount of ending inventory on the balance sheet for each of those systems. So if we look here, we've got FIFO. That's how we're going to start off, and we want to know the cost of goods sold. Well, with FIFO, the first inventory in, right, the first inventory in is the first inventory out. So we know that we sold 1,700 units, right? And we know that these 1,000 units are essentially the oldest inventory. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, you know what? I sold all 1,000 of these units here. So actually, I'm going to move this right up here if I can find a spot for it. My FIFO cost of goods sold, which is the first thing I have to calculate, is essentially 1,000 units times $100 plus 700 more at $150. Okay, and that's how we would get there. So don't really, 1,000, they've already done the math for us here. So I'm going to start with the 700 times $150, and that gives me 105,000 for this part right here. So this is 105,000, and this was 100,000. All right. So if I add 100,000 to my 105, I'm going to come up with $205,000 cost of goods sold. So we've got that answer, but we also have to calculate ending inventory. Well, let's see here now. We said that we had 3,000 units that were available in total for sale. And so what we did was, to get the cost of goods sold, was we burned through all 1,000 of these, and then we burned through 700 of these. So that means that we have 1,300 of this inventory purchase is going to make up our entire ending inventory. So 1,300, that's the 3,000 total units available for sale minus the 1,700 that we sold, times $150 each, gives us $195,000. Now, I want to say this. What I could have done is I could have just simply taken 400,000 and subtracted 205,000, and I would have come up with 195,000, right? But that's great. But what if I had made a mistake here and this 205 was wrong somehow, So by rethinking it, I can say, okay, let's see, just make sure I'm thinking right here. Okay, I sold 1,000 plus 700. Okay, so I sold 1,700. It tells me that right there. So I must have 1,300 of these left. And then by doing the actual math on that, we can kind of verify our conclusions. Again, we could have just simply taken the 400,000 minus the 205,000 cost of goods sold and come up with the exact same answer. But this method here, where we actually multiplied the 1,300 units out times the cost, is a little bit, we have a little bit more control over the process. All right, so LIFO, if we recall, is last in, first out. So we're basically going to go the other direction. And in this particular case, it's going to be kind of easy, because cost of goods sold, we sold 1,700, and we're going to pull those 1,700, or the cost of these 1,700, directly from this 2,000 here. So cost of goods sold is actually going to be fairly easy here. We're going to take the 1,700 units that we sold, and we're going to multiply that by $150, because we're using LIFO, and that gives us $255,000. All right. And again, we could just subtract from 400,000 255,000. We could do that. But you won't always have this figure available to you. Just kind of depends on how the question is set up. You could always calculate it on your own, though. So let's see, ending inventory. I just want to show you how we would do this. It would be two numbers, 300, the remaining 300 units times $150. okay, gives us 45,000, and then we would have all of this $100,000 here. And sure enough, just as we said we could have done, 400,000 minus 255,000 does in fact give us $145,000. All right. And then so we have one more to do, and then I want to just talk about these for just a moment. We've got the average cost method. And so we're going to do that a little bit differently. What we're going to do for the average cost is we're going to look at the total amount of units available and what that cost was, and we're going to come up with an average. So essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to be taking $400,000 and dividing it by 3,000 units. So let's go ahead and do that. And then all we have to do after we do that is just multiply by 1,700 for cost of goods sold, and then multiply by 1,300 for ending inventory. So first things first, we need to come up with an average cost per unit. $400,000 divided by 3,000 total units available for sale is going to give us $133.33333. Okay. And that's what the value of each item that we sell is going to be. That's how much it's going to contribute to cost of goods sold. And that's how much the value of each item in our ending inventory is going to be. So for now, I'm just going to leave this on the calculator. And I'm going to say, essentially, 1,700 times 133 point, and then an infinite number of threes. So times 1,700 gives me, let's expand this out for just a moment, $226,667. Okay. So 226,667. And then, again, we could do the exact same thing, and I will actually do it this way on this one. 400,000 available minus the 226,667 gives us ending inventory of 173,333. And then, just to kind of double check my figures here, what I'm going to do, even though I know the answer already, I'm going to use the calculator, and I'm going to divide that same $400,000 by the 3,000 units. And this is the exact same figure that we got, but this time I'm going to multiply it by the ending inventory of 1,300 units. So times 1,300, and there is the exact figure that we have, $173,333, and it does say round your answers to the nearest dollar. Okay, so we did that. And we have all of our answers. Now I want to say a couple of things. FIFO generally has an advantage of what I would call this. We would say that FIFO has a balance sheet advantage. Okay, so FIFO has a balance sheet advantage. And we would also say that Lifo has an income statement advantage. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Because this is the kind of thing that you need to know for like your multiple choice questions, right? So if we think about it, we are expensing through FIFO older goods. So that's not really very good for the income statement, because we're, especially if there's a big jump in price like this, This is inflating our income somewhat artificially, because whenever we eventually run through those 3,000 units, we probably can't buy any more at $100 each. However, the ending inventory value under FIFO is closer to replacement cost. Okay, so that's why we say that it has a balance sheet advantage. And then with Lifo, we can say that it has an income statement advantage. Lifo does a poor job with the balance sheet because a lot of in our example, for example, most of our ending inventory is at $100 a piece, and that does not reflect the current value of that inventory or what it would cost us to buy more. However, Lifo does a great job on the income statement because our cost of goods sold is going to be closer to matching current market prices. And the other thing that I would point out to you, and it goes a lot deeper than that, but we can't keep these videos going forever. The other thing I do want to point out is that the average cost method will always produce results that will be in between FIFO and Lifo, and we can see that illustrated here. Our cost of goods sold of $226.7 roughly is somewhere in between this $205 and $255. And then same thing with ending inventory. Our ending inventory of $173.3 is kind of in between $145 and $195 ending inventory under FIFO. So do keep those things in mind. This is how we would work through it from a computational standpoint, but there could be some multiple choice questions that you have to answer as well, and hopefully that little bit of information helps you. All right, that's it.